How you doing, folks? Welcome to another farm vlog at Tapping Off Farm. It's a bit of a dull, misty day here in Aberdeenshire in northeast Scotland. Today we've been concentrating on mucking out the goat byre being the goat shed. This is a job that we do pretty much once a year. We use a deep litter system for the goat shed, which means we put down fresh bedding, mostly straw, every day on top of the previous night's manure. And that piles up and piles up so deep that we lose the head height in the shed, which can be a bit dangerous for tall people like myself. And so once it gets to a level that we feel we just have to muck it out, we do. And past years we've been putting it in the trailer and driving it over to our compost area, which is at the market garden. But this year we're trying something a little bit different. Last October we experimented with our first ever Bokashi heap. I was going to say compost, but it's not compost because it's fermented. I'm sure a lot of you out there have heard of Bokashi before, especially for sort of small scale home use. The Bokashi compost caddies that you can get for your kitchen, where you can put your cooked food scraps in and add a bran which is basically inoculated with microorganisms, and that bran then helps break down the food scraps and turn it into fertiliser which you can take out to your garden. And that's great, but we're really interested in doing that on a large scale. And over the last couple of years I've noticed that a company in the UK called Agriton UK have been putting some really amazing photographs up on their Instagram feed of these huge big piles of brown material. And at first glance I thought it was compost. When I looked into it a little bit more, I saw that it was this Bokashi. And the big difference between Bokashi and compost is that Bokashi is fermented material. There seems to be some debate over what it actually translates to, but it seems to translate to well-fermented organic material. Agriton UK are certainly very active over the last couple of years in trying to promote the use of Bokashi to large-scale farmers. They've been focusing on the dairy industry, using it for taking care of slurry and of course bedding from cattle sheds. I think they've been doing some trials within market gardens as well. As a lot of you might know from following our vlogs, we've been talking about the dilemma of trying to find large amounts of compost to do a no-dig system. Where we live, it's very rural, and there's not that many places that do the large volumes of municipal waste compost. There is one company, but they don't seem to deliver anymore, and that makes it not an option for us. So we've always been trying to think, like, how can we get a large volume of very nutritious, seed-free compost? Ideally, we would like to make it from our own on-farm materials. Of course, every year we make compost. We've got this goat shed behind us, as I was just saying, which needs mucked out every year. So of course we have access to a lot of good materials for making compost. And we've made great compost over the years using our chickens to help in the process. But we're never managing to get it completely weed seed free. And it's because we mostly do a cold composting process. We just don't really feel like devoting the time to turning heaps every couple of days. We don't have the machinery to do it on a large scale. We're always looking out for a different way of doing it. When we started researching into Bokashi now, I've got to say we're not any experts on Bokashi, so do your own Googling, have a look, you'll find it really interesting. Google Bokashi, Google indigenous microorganisms, Korean natural farming, and you'll find something about it. So today isn't a how to make Bokashi vlog. As always, our vlogs are a bit of just a fly on the wall of one of our days, so that you get to see just what it takes to run a small ecological farm. But back to why I'm excited about Bokashi. The claims are that you don't turn a heap. The big difference with Bokashi compared to compost is that it's not an aerated heap, it's an anaerobic heap. We're going to be wrapping it up in silage sheets, the plastic tarps that we use in the market garden, keeping the air out. And we're not going to be turning it, we're going to be leaving it. And apparently the turnaround time for creating a usable fertiliser is a matter of weeks, maybe 2 months at the very most. So it's very quick, and that's what caught our attention, is the fact that we don't have to turn, the fact that it can be very quick. Of course, because you're not turning it, you're not releasing carbon into the atmosphere. It's fermented, which suggests that it retains a lot more nutrients, it's a lot more alive. Now, of course, we're having to buy in this EM, the effective microorganisms, which is essentially a tea. It smells lovely, it smells very much almost like beer, very yeasty smell. But it's essentially a tea of a few different important strains of bacteria and yeasts. And we've decided to go with the laboratory made EM right now. There are ways of making your own EM. Like I said, Google indigenous microorganisms. There's ways of capturing your own correct yeasts from your own farm. And we would love to get into that. That's something we want to do, but because of time and just wanting to test it out, we've had to buy in this EM. We've got 20 litres of it, which is more than enough for making a heap like the one we're making today. We've also bought some amendments, that's some clay and some shell grit to regulate the pH and to help the materials bind. Again, in the future, we're going to look into whether we would really need to add those amendments or whether we can find those amendments here on site. So I'll walk you over to the heap. We've just taken a break for lunch. We've been working all morning. The way that this works is that we bring out a few wheelbarrow loads of the goat bedding and we put that down on top of this plastic sheet. We then give it a sprinkling of the diluted EM, diluted with water. And then we throw a few handfuls of both the clay and the seashell grit onto this pile. Finn and I went over to a patch of buckwheat that we've got growing in the market garden, piled that on as a layer as well, just to make sure that we've got enough green components, the nitrogen component, because there's a huge amount of straw, carbon, in the goat shed. There certainly is a difference between goat manure and cow manure in the volume, so we just wanted to make sure that we had enough of the nitrogen ingredient in there. So we've put a layer of the buckwheat, and we'll probably keep on putting a few more layers like a lasagna in there, adding the EM, adding the amendments. Once we've got the heap to our desired volume, we're going to wrap it up in this plastic sheet, excluding the air, and then we're going to walk away and see how it is after a few weeks. So it's exciting stuff. Love experimenting. Love learning new things. Almost daily sometimes we feel like we're learning new things. And this is a new one for us. I'm sure it's a new one for a lot of you out there. So like I say, I really encourage you to go out and do your own research. And there's still a lot of learning to be done about Bokashi, and certainly its application and use within a market garden or within a homestead environment.
So me and Becky are just mucking out basically the porch area first before we attempt the rest of the byre. This wasn't actually done when we last mucked out the byre, so this is quite a vintage of manure we've got here, and a lot of it's quite composted down at the bottom, although quite an odour from the anaerobic kind of conditions. But we're mainly doing this so that once we've got this clear, we're going to put a new surface, as in some new straw down, and then we're going to move everything from that hay storage area, just the last of last year's hay basically, into here, and then we're going to be using that as our access way. So through that big gate there, that's what we'll get out to add to the pile, and we'll be taking down this wall. This is actually a door from the smithy, the blacksmith building, blacksmith ruin, and so we'll just be taking this off, and that will create a kind of big access way from the main byre to muck that out to get round to where we're making the bokashi.
so we've spent the last few hours mucking out the byre. Rosa explained we started with the porch so that we could clean that out and move some hay bales aside so that we could get into the rest of the building. And now after we've had our lunch, that's what we're doing. We're starting to muck out the majority of the shed. It's a very simple process. It does resemble compost making in the fact that we're putting layers on. We've mostly been bringing out the straw, which is already of course mixed with the goat manure. Oren's helping in his own special way. The loads keep on coming and coming. The heap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Alright, I'm just heading over to the market garden to scythe some more buckwheat. Finn and I managed to cut down quite a swathe earlier, enough to fill the trailer, and we're just wondering whether we need a little bit more green element in this pile because there's definitely more straw than manure. For making compost, that's often what we want, is a higher ratio of carbon to nitrogen material, but we really feel there is a lot of carbon in this pile. So here I am at the buckwheat. This buckwheat was sown at the end of June, and we really are just growing it so that we don't have to put plastic sheeting on this redundant plot. This is a plot that we're not using this year for vegetable production. And we thought we'd experiment with buckwheat as a green manure and as a weed suppressant, and it's doing very well at both of those things. Fantastic for bringing in insects. It's absolutely alive when the sun's out, with bees and hoverflies and beetles that I don't even know what they are. We had hoped it was going to be a good goat feed, but after a bit of research found that it's not appropriate to feed to ruminants, apart from it being good for the soil. We're going to be cutting it like we are today as an ingredient in Bokashi or an ingredient in our compost system, which is just next door to this buckwheat plot. So I'm just going to grab my scythe. It cuts very easily with a scythe, and cut another length or two, and then get the tractor and take it over to the Bokashi site.
way.
Okay.
Oh, it's epic!
I know.
This is definitely more material than we usually have.
Yeah. How you doing, Rosa?
I'm hot.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on all this right now?
That we probably should have started earlier in the morning. No, it's good. I'm really excited actually. I think it's been really nice just not having to take it all the way to our compost area over the other side of the farm. So just using wheelbarrows and bringing it around the back of the byre here. So that's been really great. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I'm amazed how much more material this is than usual. I think it's because of the combination of the fact that we had, well, we've got more goats and we did have the sheep in there as well at some point over the last year, and because of the flooding at the end of last year, which we then got ditches dug for, and we put pallets down in there, which has made life a little bit harder as well because you keep kind of hitting pallets, but it also meant that I think after that moment I kept putting a lot more bedding down to try and keep it dry because it did seem very wet, so there's been a lot more dry material to bring out. But yeah, it's just different every year, and it's just more compost for us.
Bokashi.
More bokashi for us. So this here is the level pretty much as low as it's meant to be, and then up here it's a lot. It's, I'd say like 1.5 feet high. Yeah, it's been very like lots of banging heads with such a high floor. So yeah, it's nice. It's always nice to have this dug out.
So we'll carry on tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we realised that if we wanted to finish it properly, it didn't make sense to try and push into the evening. So we're just kind of making a little bedroom, pop-up bedroom in the porch for the goats. See if they can handle that.
Oh, that's nice. All right, folks, I think we're going to call it a day. Well, we're basically running out of time. We've got to get the goats back in. We've got a massive pile behind us. It's a good 7 meters long by almost a meter or so high. So that's a great achievement. Everybody has worked very hard, and yeah, if we carried on we would be working into the dark, because not only have we still got some of the byre to muck out, but we've got all the doors to put back on, the gate to put back on, the byre, hay to stack, bedding to put down. So we're going to make a nice little overnight area for the goats in the porch, which was the first part we mucked out today, so that they can just bed down in there. We'll get them out tomorrow and we'll just finish off the job properly. But yeah, look at this. Never made such a large amount of compost really in one go. And this being very special because it's, as we keep on saying, it's not compost, it's bokashi. Anyway, so you'll just have to tune in for the next vlog to see how we go with this. I'm sure we'll be updating you all through places like Instagram and Facebook on the progress of this bokashi heap. Until then, folks, thank you so much for watching. I hope everyone's well out there. I hope you're as excited about bokashi as we are. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. See ya.